Hello, I'm Mark Newman, and welcome to Save and Changing Lives, brought to you by Interval House of Hamilton. Joining me again today is Interval House Executive Director Nancy Smith. Interval House of Hamilton has been providing services to women with or without children in the Hamilton community since 1986. Services for women who have experienced abuse, violence, human trafficking, or trauma. Nancy has been with Interval House of Hamilton since 1997. We are creating several podcasts for the purpose to evolve listeners' understanding of the complexities of women abuse, impact on women, children, and communities. We caution our listeners that some of the content in the podcast may include information that some may find difficult to hear. Nancy, you mentioned in the previous podcast that women abuse can have an impact on family pets. Can you give our listeners some examples of that?
Absolutely, Mark. In the last podcast, we talked about the definition of gender-based violence. And really, it's about that coercive, controlling behavior, typically by male to female partners, using behaviors, words, actions to create her to do what he wants, right? So when we look at someone who has a pet or farm animals, Mark, it's that intentional harm to a pet, cruelty, neglect, or actually killing that animal.
So the idea is if you control that person's pet, you control that person.
Absolutely.
And along with household pets, can animals such as farm animals be at risk?
Absolutely, Mark. And, in Hamilton, we have a huge rural community in Flamborough. And, we've heard many stories over the years of women telling us that, he threatened to burn down the barn if she didn't do what he had said, and then that just puts that onus on her to comply, right? Because that fear of his threat for her is real.
And what are some of the reasons for this cruelty and this abuse?
And again, it's around that, coercive control, right? Getting her or the kids to do, to meet its demands. And it can be things like, the cruelty, the killing, the threats, all those things. And we've heard it come out through stories, and women have told us where they've noticed that there's lack of grooming, things to watch for, overgrown nails or matted fur, and that refusal to help that animal, right? Or it could come out with forcing that animal to be in extreme temperatures, right? And not assisting that animal. It could be malnourishment. And it could be not permitting her or the kids to give the animal food, right? Or water.
I can't believe anyone would do that.
Well, we know we certainly hear in, Hamilton through our media of, isolated or individual stories. The community certainly doesn't hear the details that go on every day, and when animals are used as a means to control her or the children, it has a devastating impact all around. We know that women have lived with knowing an animal has been killed intentionally to control her or the children. We know of situations that are where the animal has been left in the community for neighbors and other relatives to see, hey, this can happen to her or the kids next. This is an example. Unsanitary conditions, bruising, scarring. I went to a woman's home, Mark, once, and the dog was missing part of its nose. Wow. The stories are devastating. And, we think that it, can't happen, and it absolutely does in our community.
Are there any resources a woman can turn to in this regard so that if she leaves the family home with her children, there is safety for the pets?
We certainly want to make sure that she is safe first and foremost, the children are safe first and foremost, but also the pets. Because women will sometimes not leave a relationship that's abusive if she has to leave behind a pet. So for emergency shelters, we brainstorm with that woman about different resources and options so that we can reduce that barrier and help support everyone that's dear to her to be safe. We look for options. And really, depending on what the pet is, will depend on what that can look like. Our Humane Society, our SPCA for Hamilton Burlington, there's different volunteers in our community, veterinarians who really come to the table around looking at options available.
Nancy Smith, thanks once again for this. It has been very informative. For more information, see intervalhouse.org. You've been listening to Save and Changing Lives, brought to you by Interval House of Hamilton. I'm Mark Newman. Thanks for spending time with us.